Make up mine. Fight.
Hey there everyone, this is Teal Opal, and I want to make a little bit of a nice TF2 update video for you guys. My past few videos have been purely negative, between the least favorite cosmetics and most hated weapons videos, and I wanted to do something positive to kind of shake things up. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you guys how and why I completed a personal TF2 collecting goal. Because you see, when I returned to making TF2 content full-time, I had a mission for myself. I had a very expensive long-term goal that I wanted to complete that I'm happy to announce I finally have. I wanted to have 2 unique unusuals for each class. And what that means is that I wanted to have 2 unusuals where the hats and the effects were different, with no multi-class cosmetics and no all-class cosmetics in the mix. That means, if you can do some simple math, 18 hats and 18 different unusual effects. And I know you might be wondering, why would I do this when I can just buy a single all-class unusual for like a third of the price it would cost to get all of these hats individually? And the reason for that is that being a TF2 YouTuber who has to alias as to avoid being focused, having a single iconic all-class unusual can make it difficult to hide your identity in the game while still wearing an unusual, and I like to wear unusuals. I like to have drip. And having multiple unusuals for multiple classes gives me more options in terms of the loadouts and unusual combos I'm able to wear. So in this video, I thought we'd go through and look at all of my unusuals for each class, talk about why I picked them and why I currently own them, and we'll just kind of show off my loadouts along the way. So hope you enjoy, hope you have a fantastic day before, during, and after watching, and let's roll. So my scout unusuals are as follows, starting with this Bubble Breeze Brim Bootlegger that I've named Boozy Bubbles. That's a lot of B's, a lot of alliteration. But the reason I chose this hat is twofold. One is that I just think it looks really nice, and the bubbles coming out of what's meant to be an alcoholic bootlegger's hat is a really nice mix. And also because there's a little bit of a rumor in the TF2 community that the reason Valve added this hat after it had been on the workshop for 10 years, this thing was submitted in like 2014, I think, is because it bears a close resemblance to the hat that Oppenheimer wears in the promo images for the film Oppenheimer. That movie obviously came out in the same summer that this hat was added and made boatloads of money, and it, alongside Barbie, really helped kind of quote-unquote save cinema in the way people were saying they were. And I actually work at a movie theater in real life and worked the opening weekend of Barbenheimer and got to experience a bunch of really funny people coming in to see both movies. So because of that, I wanted to pick up this Brim Bootlegger and found this cool one with Bubble Breeze for only about $30 at the time. It was a good deal at the time. My other scout unusual is this one, the Smitty Werben Jaegerman Jensen's #1 hat. Funny story, I did not name this hat. It came with this name, but I thought it was so perfect that I had to go with it, because there is an iconic episode of SpongeBob where a bunch of ghosts and skeletons fight Mr. Krabs over a soda drinking hat. So the fact that this hat had this effect on this hat specifically was a really good combo. The reason I went with a Bonkelum specifically is because this was actually my first unusual. My first ever unusual hat I purchased in TF2 was a bubbling, I believe, Bonkelum in like 2014. And at that point, bubbling Bonkelums were super cheap. I actually bought it with some money my parents lent me after they had gotten their tax return, so that's where your tax dollars are going, folks. And I ended up selling it later on to purchase The Binding of Isaac Rebirth on Steam, but I'll never forget it as my first unusual, and I've always enjoyed the Bonkelum as a result. So the combination of this hat having a really cool effect for the hat, and the nostalgia of it being associated with my first ever unusual, made me want to buy it. Scout has one of my more middle tier unusual lineups. I'm pretty sure the Bonkelum is quite expensive. It's like 20-something keys, but the Brim Bootlegger isn't exactly priced yet, so no one really knows how much it costs exactly. Either way, let's move on to the next class. Next up is Soldier, and he's got one of my more universally uninteresting lineups of unusuals. Neither of these are terribly interesting or high tier. They're just cool hats that I wanted to have. First up is a circling peace sign conquistador named Peaceful Protester, and the reason I bought this hat is because a while ago when I was younger, I was a big fan of the series of FrumplaQuest the Conquistador animations made by Joe Gran, and these days I have no idea what Joe Gran is up to. It seems like he's gone completely insane, but I really enjoyed his animations back in the day and particularly liked the FrumplaQuest character, and I wanted to try and cosplay him in TF2, so I started buying unusual conquistadors, and it just kind of became a hat I all around really like. It helps that it's generally really cheap unusual, so this is one of my more preferred soldier hats. And my other soldier unusual is this one, the Vile Blood Vanquisher, and these hats are funny to me. The Head of Steam, Open Mind, I think the other one's called Brain Drain, because the image for them on backpack.tf looks like a misty cloud of stuff, but then you actually equip the hats and it's just poisonous gunk pouring out of the top of their their heads. It's very funny looking. The fact that this hat is an epic haha gaming reference, specifically being a Castlevania reference, makes me more inclined to like it in general, and it actually came painted white. I didn't paint it myself, but I thought it looked really nice, so I kept it on it. And obviously, I renamed it from Vampire Vanquisher to Vile Blood Vanquisher, because I am Bloodborne trash, and you should be too. So yeah, while neither of these hats are particularly high tier or interesting, they both feed into specific interests or passions I've had either in the past or now, and are both important parts of my loadouts either way. Moving on to Pyro, we first have another funny epic haha gaming reference in the Firefighter. I really like this hat. I think it both looks really nice and suits Pyro really well on top of having a very funny name. And the fact that I was explicitly able to get a Blizzardy Storm one was very funny to me because it's basically the ultimate oxymoron. This is explicitly a fiery heat themed hat based on the Hadoukens from Street Fighter, and having a Blizzardy Storm one just kind of contrasts with it in a really nonsensical funny way to me. I like these ones. I like this combo and it's one of my favorite unusuals I own. Right next to it is the Angelic Anarchist, my flavorsome sunset brimmed bootlegger. Now, I did not know this effect looked like this when I bought it. The backpack.tf preview image would make me think that it was just kind of a static image that hovered around the class's head. So the fact that it's a bit animated and moves a bit is really cool. I've obviously talked a lot in the past about how I like the Brim of Fire. It's one of my favorite Pyro hats in the game. I know some people don't like it for being too big and looking too cartoony on the Pyro's head, but this is like a cartoony game. It's not realistic, so why are you gonna get mad at a cartoony hat? Either way, neither of these cosmetics, once again, are particularly noteworthy or high tier. They're just two unusuals I really like that I think are both very funny for different reasons. Next up is Demo Man, and he's funny because he's a class I've specifically designed to have set loadouts for his explosive and Demo Knight variants. For the explosive variant, I have the Souls of Stuntmen Pass, the Bone Zone Thunderdome. Now, this is a hat that I think is really cool. I'm shocked it's as low tier as it is, both because Bone Zone is a really nice effect. The fact that this is considered a low tier effect really shows the amount of unusual effect creep that's been added to TF2 over the years, because like 10 years ago, this would have been a super high tier Halloween effect. But the fact that I got this hat for like 15 keys despite that is really cool. Also, this hat has multiple styles. You can have it be team colored, you can make it a dumb helmet that no one would ever wear, and you have the cool black one, which is the one I like to go with. I really like this hat and don't intend to sell it anytime soon, despite the fact that many people would consider it low tier. I just think it's really cool. And for my Demo Knight loadout, we have the Van Helsing Bloodborne Demo Man with the Song of the Night, the Silver Serenade Nightbane Brim. Now, I wanted an unusual Nightbane Brim for ages, but it seemed like every time I checked backpack.tf, they were really expensive. Then one day I checked it, and there were a bunch of them for like in between 10 and 20 keys. There were like hard carry and green confetti and purple confetti ones for like 15 keys, but I ended up going with this Silver Serenade one because I thought the way the effect kind of trailed around the rim of the hat looked really cool. I thought it was a nice little effect for a nice big hat, and I thought it would be subtle without being overboard or overly obnoxious in any way. Plus, naming it would be super easy. Song of the Night is just an excellent name for this hat. All in all, I have explicitly divided my Demo Man loadouts into explosive and melee versions, and if you see any of these guys on your server, you can probably expect me to bitch a bunch of bombs or swings and then die immediately. And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, Teal Opal the Heavy, with the iconic Teal Opal rises again, the 1 of 4 Morning Glory Capo's Capper. This is my iconic YouTuber hat. I recently rebought it. Came very close to buying a green energy one instead because it was significantly cheaper and I like the effect a bit more, but this is the iconic Teal Opal hat and I had to go with it. This is obviously the big Teal Opal loadout. If you see this guy on your server, you can be assured he's Teal Opal, either me or one of the 3 other people with a Morning Glory Capo's Capper. But those ones probably won't be running around with this exact loadout, and even if they are, press F on them to make sure the names and stats and all that match up. This is just my iconic Teal Opal YouTuber loadout, and now that I'm committed to TF2 and intending to stay for an extended period of time, if until the game shuts down, then I'm going to be keeping this hat for a very long time. Moving on to my second heavy loadout, and notice I said second and not last, we have my Mercenary Resident Evil 4 unusual, which is the what are you buying? What are you selling? I like this hat a lot. I realize Arachne's Web is kind of a low tier Halloween effect again, but I think it specifically works really well on this hat, as this is kind of a murky, dingy, post-apocalyptic themed hat, so just having a cobweb with a bunch of spiders and bugs crawling around on it makes a lot of sense. Also helps that there's literally spiders in Resident Evil 4, which I personally choose to believe this hat is a reference to. I have it painted Noble Hatter's Violet and named as such. This is just a nice little low mid-tier heavy unusual that I quite enjoy and tend to wear every now and again. You might even see it in the corner of my videos. And my third and final heavy unusual is the Searing Salaryman, which I like to use in my 9 to 5 heavy loadout. This is the guy who goes out and works a job and comes home and plays some fighting games with the boys on Discord. Now, what's funny about this hat is that I actually got it from work. And by that, I mean I got called in for a meeting at 8 in the morning at my job to come in for a mandatory meeting, quote unquote. And once again, I work at a movie theater and they were doing movie trivia. And I ended up answering one of the movie trivia questions correct. I believe they asked what the highest grossing movies of the year so far were, and I answered it correct, so they gave me a $25 Universal Visa gift card. And with that gift card, I bought keys and purchased the Searing Salaryman. So more so than any other unusual I buy with money that I make from work on top of YouTube, this hat was explicitly purchased for me by going to a mandatory meeting and winning a contest. For that, I will always appreciate this hat and will likely never sell it. Moving on to Engineer, we have a bit of a funny one, as when I first returned to TF2, I bought one low-tier unusual for every class, just to kind of start me out. And I've traded all of them up since then, except for this one, the Lost Empire Explorer. My Arctic Mole with circling TF logo for Engineer is the only unusual I still have from that initial batch of 9. I just kind of like this one. I think the yellow goes really well with my Australian wrench, and I just think it looks kind of nice. If I'm gonna have this hat and this effect on anything, I really like them together. I just like this thing. It's grown on me and I think it's really neat. I will fully admit that it's garbage tier. It's probably a pretzel tier unusual, but for what it's worth, I like it and think it's neat. Now, if you guys thought my Morning Glory Kapos Capper was my rarest unusual, you'd be wrong, because my rarest hat is actually this one, the Vivid Plasma Train of Thought. This is a 1 of 3 unusual with a decent mid-tier effect on a commando grade hat that I purchased for like 11 keys. This thing is unpriced as of now, but people are selling it for dirt cheap. Once again, this is a 1 of 3 hat, and people are selling it for that cheap. So the fact that I was able to get it for that cheap was really cool. I'm not a huge fan of the Train of Thought, but I personally don't hate it as much as some other people do. I just thought this would be another cool yellow Engineer unusual to have to go along with my Australian wrench. And obviously its name. All I can say about that is, if this funny little pun makes you mad, then I invite you to get angrier. That said, on to the next class. Medic is where things pick up, because I have 2 very interesting unusuals for Medic. First off is the Orbiting Fire Berlin Brain Bowl. This is one of my favorite hats in the game. Obviously, comboing it with the Colossal Cranium makes a cool gas mask Medic that I think is one of the slickest looks you can possibly have in the game. I just love this combo. I think it looks so cool. Gas masks and faceless mercs are really badass, and this is one of the best looking ones you can have. Just pair it with a nice coat and you got an all-around perfect Medic loadout. This is one of my pricier unusuals as well. Once again, I believe it's in the mid-20s in terms of how much it costs, and Berlin Brain Bowls are not cheap in general, so the fact that I was able to get one at all with an effect that's not like confetti or nuts and bolts was really cool to me. Orbiting Fire is one of my personal most underrated unusual effects. I think it looks really cool, and if you want to get an unusual with fire without shelling out for like a flaming lantern or burning flames one, Orbiting Fire is a good alternate step. Just make sure you don't take the adjust unusual slider and you'll be just fine. Now this one is a little bit of a story. The Stormy Storm Optic Nerve that I have named Jinzo Ningen Psycho Shocker. The reason I am wearing this loadout on Medic, and the reason I bought this hat, is because Jinzo, my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh card, exists and is one that I wanted to cosplay. I saw that this Medic hat existed, or remembered that Medic had a gas mask, and immediately set out to buy an unusual one so that I could cosplay my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh card. I am an unironic Jinzo stan. If Jinzo's got 10 fans, I'm one of them. If he's got 0 fans, I'm dead. I fucking love that Yu-Gi-Oh card. So being able to inject my favorite duel monster into TF2 was definitely a little bit cool. Obviously, Stormy Storm, not the most desirable effect. I did have a Frantic Spooker, one of these, but I ended up selling it because the effect didn't really work right and often bugged out in game. Stormy Storm, while less desirable and less visually appealing, and honestly less fitting to the theme, is a much more stable and consistently working effect. So neither of my Medic hats are really all that cool on their own, but they have combos and loadouts that make them look really good together. Moving on to Sniper, we've got the Down Under Love, which is a circling heart wild brim slouch. I'm not realizing that a lot of my unusuals have the word brim in their name. Either way, this is one of my favorite hats in the game. I think the fact that this hat is so cheap unusual and is considered such undesirable garbage is insane, and really speaks to how profit obsessed the TF2 community is. Like, they'll ignore very, very good looking hats because they're quote unquote blue or undesirable or low tier, and shell out a ton of money for the most god awful ugly trash because because Valve gave it red text. I really like the Wild Brim Slouch. I think this hat is so cool, and I've owned a bunch of unusual ones, but my current one is Circling Heart. I love gassing this hat up, and if you want a cheap sniper unusual with good effects, go after the Wild Brim Slouch before someone with more influence than me realizes how cool it is and hikes its price up. And then we have the Green Cumulon. This is just a... Just looking at this hat makes me laugh. This is such a stupid hat. Nothing about this is themed or fitting in any way. It's just a stream of green jizz shooting out of the sniper's head, and it makes me laugh so hard. The fact that this is on the Highway Star of all things, which is like the worst hat this effect could possibly be on, just absolutely slays me. I love this combo. I love the Green Cumulon. I want to get a green sniper rifle to go with it. It'll be perfect. And lastly is Spy, and for some reason I've got two really good Spy unusuals. Like, both of these are decently high-tier hats with, like, mid-tier effects. We've got a Kilowatt Cosa Nostra cap to go with the wide brim fedora and mafia theme I've been going with for a lot of my classes, and this loadout is really cool. I made an SFM poster of this loadout years ago, so the fact that I can finally have an unusual version of this hat just makes me smile. I really like having this hat unusual, and I don't intend to sell it anytime soon. Nothing else really to say. It's just a slick, decently pricey Spy unusual that looks good in a lot of loadouts. And my other Spy loadout is the Cunt Spy, the Evil Spy, the Dastardly Bastard Spy, the Electric Groove Terror Watt Charmer Chapeau with the After Dark and the Made Man. If you see this guy on the server, you know he's gonna steal your girl, and then miss a backstab and die immediately. For real though, I realize what a stereotype a loadout like this is. I do not have the Masquerade mask that I can't remember the name of on Spy, but wearing this combination of items will definitely boil some people's blood on the server, even if I only manage to land one backstab on them and then die immediately. And there we have it, my personal unusual collection. I know that a lot of them are really low tier and undesirable, either being low tier hats and effects, or low tier effects on good hats, or high tier effects on bad hats in one or two cases, and I want to stress that I really personally don't care about that. I'm not one who trades or buys in TF2 for profit. I buy items that I want to use, and don't mind losing money if it means I'm going to end up with an item that I like and will use and wear. I'd much rather have low tier hats that I think look nice or go well with my loadouts, or that I just want, than shell out a ton of money for like a Hong Kong Cone or Killer Exclusive or Max's head that I can just show off to display to people that I have a lot of money. I like these hats and I think they're neat, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Thanks, I hope you have a fantastic day before, during, and after watching, and I'll catch you all later. Cheers! Say hi, bub.
Hi!
What do you like to play, Bubs?
Mario!
What else?
Kirby!
What else? You're playing it right now.
Roblox!
Yay! Say subscribe.
Subscribe!
Thank you. Say bye.
Bye!